As many of my colleagues have discussed today, rural communities are left at a disadvantage because of a lack of access to broadband service. Certainly in my Indiana 6th district, that is the case. Too many of my constituents throughout Southeast Indiana remain unserved, not underserved, totally unserved by broadband providers. That means access to telehealth, online education, remote work opportunities, and social connections with family and friends are simply out of reach. If we're going to close the digital divide with federal resources, the FCC should prioritize, in my opinion, parts of the country that remain unserved before upgrading existing networks in covered areas, like my Indianapolis. Unfortunately, the delayed process for improving outdated broadband service maps is still an issue for providers in my district. Currently, consensus block data will show coverage across my district, but all I have to do is drive from Columbus, my hometown, to Richmond or Rushville, and I can tell you where I have no service. Meanwhile, broadband infrastructure has not escaped the inflation and supply chain disruptions that ripple across the country. In my district, materials for broadband infrastructure, such as fiber and other communication equipment, still face upwards of 12-month back orders. Last summer, I wrote to the Department of Commerce with 17 of my colleagues to consider opportunities to address these shortages and secure materials necessary to close the digital divide. Mr. Chairman, I request unanimous consent to insert this letter for the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I encourage the Commission to find ways to share expertise with relevant agencies to alleviate delays and release broadband maps so that federal funding can reflect the needs of Southeast Indiana and all of rural America. Madam Chairwoman, I was pleased to see my bill, the Broadband Interagency Coordination Act, signed into law in 2020. I understand the Commission has recently updated interagency agreements to include additional agencies regarding broadband coordination. However, it's also my understanding the FCC does not have an interagency agreement with every agency involved in broadband support programs. The IIJA requires your Commission to establish a deployment locations map to provide an overview of federally funded broadband deployment projects across the country. Can you explain the interagency process that your Commission is conducting to implement this law?
Sure. It's important that we coordinate because we have a chance to make generational change with these funds, and we're only going to do it if we're all working together. And to that end, consistent with the law you described, in June of last year, we signed a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Commerce and the Department of Agriculture to make sure that we share our data with them so that we can make sure our efforts work together and not in opposition. I've already notified our colleagues at the Department of the Treasury we'd like to do the same with them. They have a $10 billion fund. They're not mentioned in the legislation, but we're casting far and wide and trying to make sure that we can all work off the same information, the same data sets, and make good decisions together.
Well, I was interested to, I would have identified Treasury. Thank you for doing that. Are you optimistic that you're going to get everybody at the table together?
I'm persistent.
Yeah, you
that might be better.
You seem like you do, so good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you all for being here, and Mr. Chair, I yield back.